I watched her walk out in her wedding dress, heart split in two. Weeks later, she came back pregnant, eyes full of apologies. But I just smiled and handed her divorce papers, with my new fiancé by my side. See how everything happened? My name's Caleb, and I build things for a living. Homes, mostly. Quiet ones, coastal, the kind where people dream about raising kids or retiring with coffee in hand and fog on the windows. But I used to believe I was building something else too, something softer. A life. With her. I was supposed to marry Emma Langston on a Saturday in May. Under a white-draped arch covered in hydrangeas she claimed she hated, but picked anyway, because her mom cried when she saw them. I watched her walk down the aisle that day. Just not toward me. It's a strange thing, watching the woman you love say, "I do," to someone else while the RSVP card you designed together sits buried in your drawer next to the ring you never gave her. You ever sat through someone else's vows, knowing they used to rehearse those words on you? That's not heartbreak. That's humiliation lacquered in politeness. Her sister invited me to the wedding. Said it was time to let go. I went. I wore the suit I bought for our ceremony and smiled at people who didn't know I was the rehearsal groom. 2 weeks before our wedding, Emma called me from her car, voice trembling like the engine she never fixed. Said her cousin in Boston was sick. She needed to go, just for a few days. I knew something was wrong by the way she didn't say, "I love you," when she hung up. 3 days later, she stopped answering my calls. Her mom said she was clearing her head. I waited. Booked another venue date just in case. Bought more time. But what I didn't know, she wasn't in Boston. She was in Tuscany, at a vineyard, marrying Mason Becker, her ex, the one who'd never grow up. I found out when one of my subcontractors forwarded a wedding photo from Instagram. It was supposed to be a joke. He didn't know. "Isn't this your girl?" he said, laughing, before realizing I wasn't. My coffee spilled. My hand shook. I stared at the photo so long the screen burned the image into my retinas. Emma in white lace, sunlight catching the veil she used to mock, kissing a man I never thought she'd touch again. Mason wore the same smug look he had in college, like he'd just want to bet no one else heard him make. Maybe he had. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just sat there. Long after the sun went down, long after the cafe closed and the barista tapped my shoulder gently like I was an abandoned child. You'd think that kind of betrayal would hit loud, wouldn't you? But it was silent. Not the silence of peace, no. The kind of silence where every breath sounds like a lie and every shadow in the room looks like a memory trying to crawl back in. I drove home without headlights that night. Don't know why. Just felt right, I guess, not to be seen. The next morning, I found her hair tie on my nightstand. She'd left it there the last night we shared, when she said she was too tired to drive and fell asleep beside me like nothing was wrong. I held it in my fist until my nails dug into my skin, until the elastic snapped like it had enough of pretending to. I opened the ring box one last time, stared at the sapphire she said reminded her of the ocean she never swam in. Then I closed it, walked into the garage, and built a fire. Not for the ring, but for the brochures, the guest list, the letter I wrote her but never sent. Her mother called the next week. I didn't answer. Her sister sent a card, "You'll find your person someday." I burned that too, but not out of anger. I just didn't want their words taking up space where silence finally felt more honest. At night, I started sleeping on the floor, as if the bed still remembered her weight and refused to forget. You ever lie on wood until your back hurts, just so your heart can feel something different? I did. For weeks. Months, maybe. Time got weird. My house got quiet. I started talking to myself just to fill the gaps. What broke me wasn't that she left. It was that she rehearsed it, planned it, smiled through dinners, took photos, chose a dress, told me she couldn't wait to see me at the altar while already holding a man who had no idea I existed in her schedule. I wasn't her mistake. I was her decoy. That's a different kind of grief. One that doesn't ask for tears, just dignity. So I didn't tell anyone, not even my brother, who would have driven to Mason's house with a tire iron and regret nothing. I just vanished, not in body, but in soul. I told my business partner I needed a break. Took a contract in a coastal town 3 hours away. Said it was for perspective, for a change of pace. Truth? I just didn't want to risk running into her at the grocery store. Didn't want to smell her perfume on a stranger and lose my mind in aisle 7. So I left, packed 2 bags. Took the ring box with me, not because I still loved her, but because closure doesn't come when you ask. It comes when it's damn well ready. And I wasn't. Not yet. There's a moment that plays on loop in my head. Not the vows. Not the dress. Just her turning back, laughing, while someone placed a flower crown on her head. The same laugh she used when we danced in my kitchen barefoot, after we signed the lease on our first apartment. That laugh, that's what I missed. Until I realized, it wasn't mine. Maybe it never was. She just borrowed it for a while. Like my time. Like my trust. Like everything else she took and never returned. You think you know what revenge looks like. You think it's fire, fury, broken glass. But sometimes, it's the quiet decision to rebuild, alone. It's choosing peace over explanation. It's showing up later, when no one expects you, and smiling like nothing was ever taken from you. That day at her wedding, I didn't cry. I just nodded, said congratulations. And when she looked at me, really looked, I saw it. That flicker of guilt. That pause. Like she knew what I could have done, and feared what I still might. But I didn't do a thing. Not yet. Disappearing wasn't a cry for help. It was the only form of protest that didn't make me feel like a fool. I didn't make a scene, didn't leave some cryptic note behind. I just powered off my phone, transferred my business calls to my partner, and drove until the gas light blinked for the 3rd time and I didn't recognize the skyline. I landed in a coastal town with no attachment to anything but the sound of waves punching the cliffs. First night, I slept in my truck by a pier that smelled like rust and salted silence. Nobody knew my name. And that was the whole point. In the city, everything was loud, memories, judgment, even the damn coffee shop playlists. But here, I could breathe without bumping into reminders of her. There were no bakeries we'd shared croissants in, no baristas who gave us our usual. Just chipped sidewalks and ocean wind, and a room I rented above a retired librarian who forgot my name daily. Mrs. Calhoun thought I was Kevin for the first month, and I didn't correct her. Let her believe I was someone else. Because for those weeks, I was. I wasn't the guy who got left at the altar. I wasn't the man who built vows that were never meant to be kept. I was no one. And no one hurts. People back home assumed I was grieving. Some probably thought I checked into a rehab center or spiraled into some self-destruction arc. Truth is, the destruction had already happened. Quiet, clean, surgical. I didn't need substances to numb the pain. I needed distance. From her. From me. From the version of myself that waited at a window like a loyal dog while she danced in vineyards and whispered forever to someone else. I bought a stack of black notebooks from a corner store and started writing. Not love letters, not poems. Just thoughts. Fractured ones. Half sentences. The kind of honesty you can't say out loud without breaking something. I found work fast. Small towns always need people who know how to fix roofs and rewire breakers. The guy who owned the supply store, Marty, offered me steady gigs after I fixed a broken back deck in 2 days flat. We didn't talk much. He asked where I was from once. I said far enough. He nodded like that was good enough for him. People here didn't pry. They let you earn your space. You showed up, did your work, paid your tab, and they left you alone. It was peace, but not the healing kind. The kind that lets the wound close crooked, unbothered by alignment. Every morning, I woke up before the sun and ran along the cliffs until my lungs burned. Not because I liked running. I hated it. But pain physical, earned pain felt like penance. Like maybe if I hurt enough in my body, I wouldn't feel the bruises in my memory as sharply. I didn't look at my phone for weeks. When I finally did, there were dozens of messages from Emma. At first, they were casual. Just wanted to check on you. Then guilty. I didn't mean to hurt you. Then desperate. Please say something. I didn't reply. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I had nothing left to say. Her mother left voicemails, soft, hesitant ones. I don't condone what she did, but she's still my daughter. I deleted them without listening all the way through. I wasn't angry. I was empty. And emptiness doesn't have room for explanations. One day, I opened my email to find a scanned copy of a wedding photo. No message, just the image. Her eyes were distant in it. Like maybe she knew even then. Like maybe she thought, for a split second, that I'd show up and stop it. that she wanted me to. That flicker of confusion in her eyes, it haunted me for weeks. There was a small bookstore on the edge of town, half books, half cafe, all quiet corners. That's where I met Lena. She was sketching a tree that had half collapsed in a storm. Said she liked things that didn't know how to fall gracefully. We didn't talk much at first. She offered me coffee one day when the power went out and I helped move sandbags from the front door. She never asked why I was in town. Never asked where I came from. Just looked at me like I wasn't broken. Like I was something paused, not ruined. That's a powerful kind of mercy when you're barely standing. Lena painted on wood panels and read poetry in the mornings when no one else was around. We started sharing space. Not as a couple, not yet, just as two people who understood how to sit in silence without needing to fill it. She had eyes that saw too much and never flinched. One day, she asked what I did before this. I told her I used to write other people's vows. Ghostwriting mostly. She smiled and said, "You must be good at lying." I didn't argue. I just said, "I used to be." That was the first time I felt my voice stop shaking when I talked about the past. At night, I'd lie in bed and listen to the wind scrape the windows, and I'd wonder if Emma ever thought about me. Not in a longing way. Just if I existed in her mind after the party ended and the music died down. Did she tell her husband the truth? Did he care? Or was I just a chapter she closed mid-sentence? I didn't want her back. That wasn't it. I just wanted the truth to have mattered to someone besides me. I wanted to know I wasn't invisible, that my pain wasn't just a casualty of her happiness. There's a difference between forgiveness and forgetting. I wasn't interested in either. I was interested in becoming someone new, someone who could walk into a room without flinching when someone said her name, someone who didn't need a ring box in the drawer to remember who he used to be, someone who didn't need revenge to feel whole, just clarity, just a quiet kind of reclamation. And maybe, eventually, peace. But peace isn't something you chase. It finds you when you stop running. And I was still running, still waiting for the silence to teach me what the noise never could. I never planned to stay in that town more than a few weeks. But weeks turned into months, and eventually I stopped checking the calendar. Time stopped being something I measured in dates and started being something I measured in mornings. The first morning, I didn't check my phone. The morning, I didn't think of her name. The morning I laughed, actually laughed, when Lena told me I hammered a board backward. Each of those days chipped away at the man who used to stare at a sapphire ring and call it love. I didn't notice I was changing until I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man who wasn't waiting anymore. I started eating better, not to get fit, not to impress anyone, but because I was tired of feeling tired. My body had been a storage unit for stress and sleeplessness, but slowly it turned into something else, something useful again. I joined a small gym behind the post office. Mostly older folks just trying to outlive their regrets. We never talked much, but they nodded when I walked in. There's a kind of unspoken bond among people who have learned to carry things without sharing the weight. I didn't talk about Emma, and no one asked. That kind of silence, it heals faster than pity. Marty started trusting me with bigger projects, foundation work, not just patch jobs. I rebuilt 3 porches, a widow's garage, and a beach walkway that got ripped apart in the last storm. Hammering wood, measuring lines, making something steady out of splinters, it did something to me. Something good. You ever build something that doesn't need your name on it to matter? That's what those jobs felt like. One afternoon, while replacing a support beam, I realized I hadn't thought of the wedding photo in days. That used to be my trigger. No? It was a ghost. Still there, but no longer screaming. Lena and I started seeing each other more often, but it wasn't romantic, not at first. We'd sit by the harbor, sketch buildings, talk about how cities are built on decisions and ruins. She said, "You don't talk about home much." I said, "That's the idea." She didn't push. Just nodded like she knew the shape of silence well. I told her about my vow-writing days one night when we got caught in the rain and ducked into a laundromat. She laughed and said, "So you used to write happy endings?" I shook my head. Just beginnings. And for the first time, I felt proud of that. I opened the ring box again one night. Not because I missed her, but because I needed to know if the pain still lived there. It didn't. The ring looked dull under the motel lamp, like it had aged without being worn. I held it in my palm and waited for the ache, but all I felt was stillness. That's when I knew I was healing. Not healed. That's a myth. But healing. Like maybe I didn't need to carry it anymore. I closed the box and tucked it back into the drawer. This time, it wasn't sacred. It was just metal and memory. There's this tree outside the bookstore, bent from storms, almost split in two. Lena once told me it reminded her of me. I asked if that meant I looked like I was falling apart. She smiled and said no. It means you're still standing even after something tried to break you open. That stuck with me, more than it should have, because maybe she was right. Maybe surviving betrayal doesn't make you jaded. Maybe it just makes you precise about who gets access to you next. I stopped looking over my shoulder. Stopped expecting a message from Emma to come screaming back into my world. Then one morning, I got an email from a former client, someone I wrote vows for 2 years ago. She said, "Your words saved us. We were going to call it quits, and then we found the draft you gave us and read it out loud again." I stared at the message for 10 minutes, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I had forgotten what it felt like to be useful like that, to make something that could hold people together. And in that moment, I didn't feel like a fraud. I felt like a builder again, not just of porches and walkways, but of meaning. I started writing again. Nothing fancy, just thoughts. Sometimes to Emma, sometimes to no one. I didn't need answers. I just needed to hear myself say the truth out loud. One night, I wrote, "You didn't break me. You just revealed the places I'd left unguarded." That sentence stayed with me for days, like I'd excavated something I didn't know was buried. And every time I wrote, I felt a little lighter, like I was finally clearing the wreckage, one word at a time. Lena noticed. She said my shoulders didn't look as heavy anymore. I didn't realize they had. She kissed me on the pier one night. No build-up, no declaration, just a quiet moment, wind in our faces, and her hand on mine. It wasn't electric or cinematic. It was steady, gentle, like something earned. I didn't pull away. I didn't think of Emma. I didn't feel guilt, just warmth. And maybe that's what healing really is, being able to feel something new without comparing it to the old. We didn't talk about what it meant. Didn't need to. Some moments just are. And for the first time in a long time, I let something good happen without flinching. There was still a part of me that wasn't ready, that knew I couldn't go back yet, not even to visit. But I was closer to being the man who could stand in front of what hurt him and not crumble. Closer to being the kind of partner who doesn't disappear when things get hard. Closer to being whole, not perfect, not fixed, but whole. You don't rebuild your life in grand gestures. You do it in quiet mornings, in hard-earned silences, in the soft look of someone who sees the scars and stays anyway. And that's who I was becoming. I hadn't planned to go back. I'd drawn an invisible line between who I was and who I became, and crossing it felt like undoing everything I'd survived. But the past has a way of dragging you back, sometimes gently, like a hand on your shoulder, and sometimes with the blunt force of loyalty. My best friend, Jordan, was getting married. And when he asked me to be his best man, he said it like he already knew I'd say no. That's what made me say yes. Sometimes the people who show up for you during your worst moments are the ones you can't leave standing alone. I hadn't seen Jordan since before Emma left. He tried calling, texting, even showing up at my parents' place once. But I wasn't ready then. I didn't want comfort. I wanted stillness. He never pushed, never judged. Just left the door open, said, "Come back when you're ready." Not a minute before. That kind of friendship? It's rare. And I wasn't about to miss the most important day of his life because of mine. So I told Lena I needed to go. She didn't blink, didn't ask questions. Just said, "You want me to come with you?" That sentence, so simple, so unselfish, it made everything after easier. We arrived the night before the rehearsal dinner. The city hadn't changed much, but I had. I felt taller somehow, not in height, but in spine. Like I could walk through the memories without getting dragged down by them. I kept expecting the pain to crash in, but it didn't. It hummed softly in the background, like a song you don't listen to anymore, but still know all the words. Jordan hugged me like he didn't trust himself to let go. Said, "You look different." I said, "I am." He looked over at Lena, then back at me, and his eyes filled with a kind of peace I hadn't seen in years. The rehearsal dinner was a blur of clinking glasses and cautious stares. Some people knew, some didn't. Emma's name didn't come up. Not until halfway through the evening when someone said, You hear she's back in town? My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. Just nodded like it was small talk. They didn't know she'd been reaching out again. I'd ignored every attempt, emails, calls from random numbers, even a handwritten letter tucked inside a holiday card. I hadn't opened it. Couldn't. Not because I was angry, but because I was afraid it would undo the man I'd spent months becoming. Then came the wedding day. Crisp air, soft light, everyone buzzing with joy. Jordan looked nervous in his suit, but not because of the vows. He kept scanning the crowd. She's here, he said quietly. Emma. She came with her sister. I nodded. Didn't ask why he told me. We both knew why. I spotted her during the ceremony, third row, right side, hands resting on a stomach that curved ever so slightly beneath a loose dress. Pregnant. The word hit like a rock skipping across still water. It didn't make a splash. It just kept going, and going, and going. After the ceremony, while people mingled and music filled the air, she found me. Walked up slow, like maybe I'd bolt. I didn't. I stood still and let her get close enough to see what she'd done to me, and what she hadn't. Her eyes were glassy, her voice low. You look good. I nodded. Said nothing. Let her fill the silence. It's not what you think, she added, one hand touching the curve of her belly like it might shield her. He left. A month ago. I didn't ask why, didn't ask how. Just looked at her, really looked, and saw it. The apology living in her eyes, but never making it to her mouth. You ever see someone so clearly it makes you sad? Not because you miss them, but because you finally see what they really were? That's what it felt like. She wasn't the woman I used to love. Or maybe she was, and I had just been too desperate to notice. She stepped closer. I made a mistake. I nodded. Yeah, I said. You did. She blinked like the truth stung. Do you ever think about what could have been? I didn't hesitate. No, that lie was kinder than the truth, and I owed myself that mercy more than I owed her honesty. Lena walked over then, calm and steady, the way she always is. She offered me a drink, placed a hand on my back like a lighthouse on a stormy night. Emma looked at her, then back at me, and I saw the realization bloom in her face. Not just that I'd moved on it, but that I'd done it without leaving pieces of myself behind. She tried to smile. It didn't hold. I guess this is goodbye, then. I shrugged. It was goodbye a long time ago. And with that, she turned and walked away, slower than she came, belly first, regret trailing behind her like a veil she didn't get to take off. Later that night, I found Lena outside, barefoot in the grass, staring at the stars like they owed her an answer. I sat beside her, quiet. She leaned into me, said, You okay? I nodded. Not because everything was okay, but because I was. I was okay. And maybe that's what real closure is. Not slamming a door. Not burning a bridge. Just realizing you don't need to walk down that road again, not because it's broken, but because you finally know where it ends. And you've got better places to be. She showed up 2 days later. I'd stayed behind after Jordan's wedding to help him with the cleanup. Stacking chairs, hauling out trash bags filled with half-eaten cake and discarded boutonnieres. The silence after a celebration always feels heavier than before it, like the air itself remembers the vows and laughter, and now it's grieving their absence. I was folding linen napkins when I heard the knock. Gentle, too polite to be a stranger. I didn't answer at first. Just let it sit there. 3 knocks, spaced like a heartbeat. When I finally opened the door, Emma was standing on the porch, holding a paper bag and wearing the same look she used to give me when she was afraid I might be too good for her. She didn't speak right away. Just looked down, then back up, like she was trying to read my face before committing to words. I brought you something, she said. Her voice was soft, like dust settling after a fall. She held out the bag. Inside was a loaf of lemon bread. I hadn't eaten lemon bread in over a year. She used to bake it when she wanted to say something without saying it. I didn't take the bag. I didn't move. I just said, Why are you here? That should have been enough. But Emma never answered the question you asked, only the one she wanted to. I needed to see you, she said, stepping inside without being invited. One last time. I didn't stop her. There was nothing in that room she could take that hadn't already been taken. She sat on the edge of the couch, hands pressed flat against her thighs like she was grounding herself. I wasn't happy, she started. With him. With the choice I made. I don't know what I thought. Maybe that it would feel more real, more right. But it didn't. I didn't reply, didn't nod, just waited. Let her try to carry the weight she'd handed me so long ago. Her eyes flicked around the room. You repainted, she said, almost smiling. The walls used to be gray. I didn't tell her they were gray because she'd picked them, that this room used to hold the echo of her laugh, that now it held silence like a second skin. Instead, I said, you didn't come here for a tour. She flinched, like the truth stung. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I don't get to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that it wasn't about you. It was me. I wasn't ready for what we had. I let the silence stretch. I learned that silence is not absence. It's accountability if you let it breathe. She finally looked at me. Really looked. I loved you, Caleb. I did. I nodded. But not enough, I said. Or not the right way. Her lip trembled, and for a second I saw the girl I'd once stayed up all night talking to on the roof of my first apartment, promising her I'd always show up. I wanted to fix it, she said. When things with him fell apart, I thought maybe I cut her off, gently. Emma, I'm not your shelter. The words surprised even me. Not their truth, but their calm. That's how I knew I was done, because I didn't need to raise my voice to reclaim what was mine. I stood, walked to the drawer beneath the bookshelf, and pulled out a folder. Yellow. Simple. Inside were the divorce papers, and signed, untouched since the day they'd arrived. I hadn't known what to do with them back then. Part of me thought maybe they'd be the last thread tying us together, and I wasn't ready to let go. But now? Now they were just overdue housekeeping. I placed them on the coffee table, along with a pin. You never signed, I said. Her face crumpled, just a little. I couldn't, she whispered. Felt too final. I looked her straight in the eye. That's because it is. Then Lena stepped out from the hallway. She hadn't meant to interrupt, I could tell. But she did it with grace. Barefoot, hair still wet from a shower, a soft cardigan draped over her shoulders. She glanced at Emma, then at me, and said, Everything okay? I nodded. Yeah. Just tying up loose ends. Emma turned to her, eyes full of something I couldn't name. Envy, maybe. Or recognition. The kind you feel when you realize someone else now holds what you once took for granted. Lena walked over, placed a hand lightly on my arm. Emma's eyes followed the movement, and I saw it hit her. Emma didn't cry. She didn't plead. She just sat there for a few more seconds, then picked up the pen and signed. One stroke at a time. No hesitation. When she was done, she slid the papers back toward me. You're happy, she said, but it wasn't a question. I nodded once. I am. She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. Good, she whispered. Then she stood, smoothed her dress, and walked out the door. No goodbye. No glance back. Just quiet. Final. A kind of stillness that comes when you finally run out of justifications. Lena didn't say anything at first. She just sat next to me, leaned her head against my shoulder, and breathed with me. That's how I knew she understood, without needing the whole story, without demanding the pieces. I looked at the signed papers on the table and felt no satisfaction, no vindication, just relief, like an overdue exhale. It's done, I said. She nodded. So what now? I looked around the room, at the new walls, the clean space, the absence of echoes. Now, I said, we start fresh. No ghosts, no guilt. And we sat there, in the kind of silence that doesn't hurt, the kind that heals. We didn't have a grand wedding. There were no towering cakes or overpriced photographers, no teary toasts or choreographed dances. Just the sound of ocean wind and bare feet in the sand. Lena and I stood on a driftwood plank someone had dragged out from the shore, our hands joined, our eyes quiet. She wore no veil, no diamonds, just a soft blue dress and a smile that felt more like home than anything I'd ever built. There were maybe 8 people there. A retired pastor, my brother, a florist who forgot the bouquet but offered a conch shell instead. It was perfect in all the ways the first time hadn't been. I never gave her the old ring. That one stayed in the drawer until the night before the ceremony. I pulled it out like an old scar and held it under the lamplight, the sapphire still catching what little shimmer it had left. For a second, I wondered if it ever really belonged to Emma. She'd worn it in my mind, yes. But on her finger? Never. It had never known warmth, only waiting. I didn't ask Lena what she thought I should do with it. She didn't ask either. We both knew it wasn't a decision to be shared. It was a goodbye I had to give myself. So that night, just before dawn, I walked to the shoreline alone. The sky was still ink black, and the air carried that pre-storm stillness that makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. I dug a hole near the tide line, maybe 6 inches deep, and placed the ring inside. No speech, no tears, just a final gesture. Then I covered it with sand and stepped back. The water reached it 5 minutes later, and by the time the sun peeked over the horizon, it was gone. Buried, swallowed, maybe reclaimed. Either way, it wasn't mine anymore. It never really had been. When I walked back, Lena was waiting on the porch, 2 mugs of coffee beside her. She didn't ask where I'd been, just slid a cup toward me and touched my knee with her bare foot under the table. That's the kind of love we had, wordless in the best ways. She never tried to fix me, never tried to fill the silences with explanations or apologies she didn't know. She just let me be. Let me figure out who I was now, without needing to remind me of who I'd been. You ever meet someone who doesn't see your scars as proof of damage but as evidence you survived? That's Lena. After the ceremony, we didn't post photos, didn't announce it, just sent a few texts and went home. We lit candles and played old jazz on a dusty turntable she found at a thrift shop. She curled up next to me on the couch, feet tucked under her, head against my chest, and asked, "What would you have told yourself a year ago if you could go back?" I thought for a long time before I answered. I would have told him to stop trying to make sense of her silence, I said. That some people don't leave because they stopped loving you. They leave because they never knew how. That night, I dreamt of a hallway filled with closed doors. Some of them had names on them. Emma's did. But when I opened it, there was nothing inside. Just white walls and a small broken clock. I turned it over in my hands, and the second hand started ticking again. When I woke up, Lena was still sleeping, fingers curled around my arm. I lay there a while, listening to her breathe, feeling a kind of stillness that didn't feel like a void anymore. It felt like a beginning, and for once, I didn't feel like I needed to brace for something breaking. Sometimes people ask why I never got angry, why I didn't expose her, why I didn't scream or burn the photos or send out a mass email like some dramatic story you'd read online. But the truth is, anger wouldn't have given me back the time. It wouldn't have made her love me right. It would have just made me small. And I'd already spent enough of my life shrinking myself to make others comfortable. My revenge wasn't loud. It didn't show up in courtrooms or on social media. It showed up in peace. In the life she never got to finish building with me. In the life I finally let myself live without her. Some things still linger. That can't be helped. Grief doesn't exit politely. It leaves its shoes by the door and hangs around long after the party's ended. But I've learned to live with it, to make space for it without letting it take over. Every so often, I'll hear a song she loved or see a wedding dress in a storefront, and something will tighten in my chest. Not pain exactly. Just memory. Just proof that I was there, once. That I felt something real, even if it wasn't returned the way I deserved. But the difference now? I don't stay in that feeling. I let it pass. I let it be what it is and move on. Because I'm not who I was. Not the man waiting at an altar for someone who never planned to arrive. Not the version of myself that mistook silence for grace. I'm someone who walked through fire and didn't turn to ash. Someone who buried a ring not out of rage, but out of reverence for who I used to be. Someone who finally made vows that weren't borrowed or written for someone else, but built from the ground up, honest, steady, mine. And now, when I look at Lena, I don't feel like I need to prove I've healed. I don't need to pretend I never got hurt. She sees it all and stays. That's what love is. Not rescue. Not replacement. Just presence. Just staying. Some endings don't come with closure. They come with choices. Quiet ones. Ones you make alone, without applause, without witnesses. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you once would have built your whole life around, then you know it's not weakness. It's clarity. And clarity costs. If this story felt like something you've lived, or something you're still carrying, you're not alone. I tell stories like this every day. Stories about love, silence, and the strength it takes to start again. Hit subscribe. Stay with the ones who choose peace over performance. See you soon in the next story.